items. The title of the class is in Krishna consciousness in good times and bad times. It is an important kind of topic because everybody here experience only the good times. Hands up. Does anything bad ever happen to anybody?
Yes.
Yes, okay. That tends to be, can be the situation. How do you all? So, I thought I would start off by reading just a verse from the Bible, from the Bible itself. It's one of my favorite verses, actually. Not only because it's very meaningful, but also because it sounds so good, you know. I'll see can I pronounce it properly. But it's in the 14th chapter of the 10th canto, and it's entitled Brahma's Prayers to Lord Krishna. Does anyone know why is Brahma praying to Lord Krishna? Does anybody know? See, I'm going to put it on you. Why is Brahma praying to Lord Krishna?
Because you know that he is the supreme personality of Godhead.
Yes, that's good. That's very good. And we have the Brahma Samhita, which are all about Lord Brahma's prayers to Lord Krishna. But there's another specific reason why he's praying at this particular time in the 10th canto. A specific reason. Okay, I'll give you a hint. It's to do with cows and cowherd boys. He's asking for forgiveness. Exactly. Why?
Because he's stolen them for 1 year.
That's right. Because Lord Brahma wanted to test the potency of God, of Krishna. And so what he did was he hid the cows and the cowherd boys, which was for only 1 minute or 1 second. But actually in the demigod's time was for 1 year. So they were missing for 1 year, and he wanted to see, why is it, what happened here? I mean, I just stole them, and I looked, and I came back, and there's Krishna as though nothing happened. The cows and the boys were still there. So he was testing his mystic potency against Krishna's power, you know. So therefore he realized that God is the supreme, so therefore now he's praying to him. So this is the words he uses. Gane prayasta mudapasta zatnamanta eva jivanta sanmukharitim bhavati avarstam dane stita stratigata tanoman manobir ye prayasho jitatitopya satatilokyam. My translation wasn't as good there because I didn't have my glasses, but anyway. The actual translation of it is, those who even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge, and with their body, words and mind, offer all respects to descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations, which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees. Certainly conquer your lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within 3 worlds. So, you might ask, why did I choose that verse? What was the purpose of that? Well, it is very important because as people, we try to work out who God is by our intellect, our brain. And although the intellect and the brain may be good at certain things, it is very limited in trying to understand the supreme power behind everything. We don't know next breath is coming from, how we got our next breath. We don't know how our heart is beating, yet it's beating. Fire, air, where's all the air coming from? Where's fire coming from? Where's knowledge coming from even, we're all here today because we're trying to understand things, So we're very limited in understanding these things. We don't understand very much what's going on outside 83 Middle Abbey Street on the top floor. We hardly know what's going down in the restaurant downstairs, or even there's another floor beneath us, what's going on there. Is there an insect crawling across the table downstairs? We have very limited information, and yet we come and we hear about the nature of God, who, according to most religious scriptures, is a very incredible being. In fact, even today, there are still quite a few people who believe in God, but a lot of people don't. They think there is no such thing as God. They think that this whole universe happened by chance, and they think that it was just going on by its own accord. And the amount of people that are believing that is growing and growing, actually, I would think. Anyway, by the way they're acting, even if they don't believe it, or they might say they believe in God, they're not acting as though they believe in God. But just because a whole bunch of people believe in something doesn't mean to say it's true. And it depends on the type of people who are believing in something as well. I mean, you can get I'm not casting aspersions on anybody here, but if you go into a room and you give, maybe there's 50 people in there, and you give them 5 pints of alcohol, at the end of it, if you go in and ask them, could you tell us about the nature of the supreme truth? You'll get quite an interesting response, I would say. Okay, give them, if you don't think it'll happen after 5, give them 10, it'll be even worse. If you often see when a person is intoxicated, they think they're making perfect sense, but everybody else thinks they're just an idiot, That's the nature, But yet those people absolutely believe in what they're thinking and believe what they're saying. So, therefore, information about the material world, which would you prefer? Would you prefer to hear from people who are massively intoxicated? Or would you prefer to hear from people who've got their senses about them? The answer is quite obvious, isn't it? Well, that's the nature of the spiritual sound vibration, because it is coming from the spiritual world, aporoshea. And our duty as human beings is to hear this sound vibration, so that we can understand the nature of reality. In our line, we have Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu there on the altar. He has made it very simple by introducing the Maha Mantra, or the Hare Krishna mantra, which is the absolute truth. It is the absolute truth, almost incarnate. It's coming into the spirit, into the material world. And anybody who vibrates it with feeling, they will actually get an experience, a real experience of the spiritual dimension. Gokara, Premadana, Harinam's Sankirtan. That the holy name, the sound, it descends into the material world. So we want to become in touch with people who are addicted, not to alcohol, but who are addicted to the spiritual sound vibration. Because there is different levels of realization of Krishna. Krishna makes himself very easily felt and very easily understood. But we often tend not to be qualified to be able to accept that information as Krishna is giving it. So therefore we follow a process by which we can understand the nature of the spirit or of soul. This is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And not only that, but also by hearing from the spiritual domain, by hearing from the books. This hearing is not the same as chanting Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola. It's not the same thing, you know. The hearing is information that's going on from the spiritual domain. So we've established, first of all, that we want to hear from people who are not intoxicated, isn't it? Would everybody agree with that? So the people who wrote these books, they are all on the spiritual platform. And they're following a whole parampara line. If we look on the altar there, it's coming from Krishna to from Krishna all the way down to the, we'll say, we'll go quickly to Lord Chaitanya, to the Goswamis, to the parampara. When we actually can get in touch with the information that's there, we are accessing all the information coming from Krishna. Do you understand that? One of the important aspects of that is humility. Because if we're very, very humble and we don't think that we know everything, then we're in a very good position. And if we have faith in the parampara system, then we will be so lowly minded that we will be able to take all the information that's coming. And not only that, but we will get the help from all the acharyas that are mentioned there. They will give us this mercy, they will give us this understanding. And this is what this verse is about. It's about not just by using our own propensities, our own abilities, whatever, to understand the truth. Instead, we are depending on the information coming down to us. So we're in that sense we're coming into a good position, you know, whereby we can be able to accept the information. You know, we're trying to become qualified to understand what's there. Now, in this verse it said, those who, while remaining situated in their established social positions. In other words, whatever work that you're doing, whether you're a chef, whether you're an IT person, whether you're a computer salesperson, whatever occupation that you're in, if you give up the process of trying to understand God by your own speculative processes, but instead it says that with body, words and mind, offer our respects to descriptions of your personality and activities. So this is what we're trying to do today. We're trying to give descriptions on the spiritual plane. I'm not making up the descriptions. I didn't go back to my house in Ongar and write down a few descriptions. These are descriptions which are in existence since time immemorial. And we mentioned about Lord Brahma earlier, the Brahma Samhita. Lord Brahma is the creator of the material world. He actually created the material world. But he did so by the instruction coming from Krishna. Krishna gave him the sound. He said, tapa, tapa. Lord Brahma, he located himself on a lotus flower. And it was attached to the navel of Karna Daksha Vishnu. Shiro Daksha Vishnu. So he wanted to know, where am I? He didn't understand what is the situation here. How am I? So what he did was he was given the information by Krishna how to find out that point. So Krishna told him, tapa, perform some austerity. And Brahma did that, and then he understood where he was, and then he understood where he was in relation to Lord Vishnu. So there. So this was very very important for him to understand. So Lord Brahma is saying here in this prayer that if we offer respects to descriptions of your personalities and activities, dedicating your lives to these narrations. So this is what we're doing here. We're actually, even though we have different occupations ourselves, we're dedicating our lives to these narrations about the Supreme Lord. We're actually dedicating our lives in order to quickly, and the word is quickly, go back to the spiritual world. Does everybody want to stay here in the material world? Hands up who wants to stay here. Hands up who wants to stay in the spiritual world. Haribo! So we've got our course set. We want to go there. So it says here, the way to go there is to dedicate our lives to the narrations about the Supreme Lord. Now there's 90 chapters in this Canto 10 in the Bhagavatam, and they're all descriptions about Krishna. About Krishna. Has anyone ever heard Janikasura? Who is Janikasura? Tell me. First one gets an extra Galabjaman today. He's a demon. What type of demon? The donkey demon. Okay. You probably made the Galabjans. But no, they're different. The reason they're different.
Aspects, yeah,
they're different. No, they are different.
Somewhere, but I can't recall it at the moment.
They're different because they represent different things.
Yes.
There's Putana.
Yes.
Who's Putana?
Well, it's another woman. Like it's a woman form.
A woman form. What type of woman?
Very ferocious.
Yes.
That's for
She's
sure.
in the form of a witch.
Yes.
So what does she represent?
Witchcraft, I said.
In one sense, yeah. But actually what she represents is a false guru. A false guru. So that's the danger when we come to spiritual life, that there are false gurus, because it wouldn't be in this Krishna book unless there was. Do you know? So we have to be very careful not to become prey to some false guru. I mean, in the material world it's very obvious the false guru is money.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Many things there is power.
But in the spiritual life, many people who think they're on the path actually become trapped by false information. And this is why this actual verse today is about that. Is because people tend to want to think that they can actually work out who God is themselves. And they have to develop the tendency to be humble so that they can actually get this information that's coming down. Because the danger all the time, it's amazing. The reason I'm stressing it so much is that it's like a spiritual life is like a razor's edge, you know. If you slip, you can cut yourself quite a lot, you know. So therefore, it's important to get the information which is coming down directly. So therefore, that's why we constantly read about the pastimes, you know, of, for instance, in the Krishna book, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Purana. Because it is it's the distilled information. It's very perfect. It's not to say that there isn't this spiritual information in many other scriptures. We're not saying that by any means. There is. God is not limited that he has to just stay in one spiritual system. But the system that we're accepting, or which we're presenting here, is the one that's coming down in parampara from Krishna himself. And Lord Brahma is, in that sense, he is speaking here to Krishna. He's apologizing for trying to trick Krishna in that sense, in this Brahma Vimohana Leela. And there is the theme of the classes is to try to understand how that in good times and in bad times we still can make progress in spiritual life. In fact, probably, tell me, what do you think? Is it easier to make spiritual progress in good times or in bad times? Hands up for good times. Who says it's easier to make spiritual progress in good times? So, not many there. How about in bad times? Just see. Hands up the people who like to get bad times. We don't want it, isn't it? So therefore Krishna is in a difficult position because we want to learn more, but we don't like bad times. So Krishna's got that hard task to teach us, and yet at the same time not to be too bad for us, you know. It's kind of tricky. So that's what the class is about today, and it's actually about a famous verse It's verse 6. It's a few verses later. And this is because Lord Brahma is the person who's giving this information. Tatena kamham susamishama bunjani vatma kritam vapakam vidvag vapavir virdanam namaste jivanti ye mukta padena nadayavak. I'm sorry, my pronunciation isn't very good, but anyway. It says, my dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances within the heart, words and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So everyone here earlier said that they wanted liberation, isn't it? Isn't it? We want to go to back to the spiritual world, isn't it? We all want that, right? So, do you still want it even though you're going to get bad times? Does anybody want to go to the dentist tomorrow, even though they have perfectly good teeth? But, this is what the class is about, is that we're going to get good times and bad times anyway, do you know? Why do you think we're going to get bad times? Because there's certain laws going on, isn't it? What law particularly represents us getting good times and bad times? The law of karma. Karma means as we act, then we will get the result. As you sow, so shall you reap. See? As you sow, so shall you reap. So actually, we are the product now of how we've lived previously. So, has anyone here ever done any bad things in their life? Everyone, exactly, yeah. So,
degree, but I think
yeah.
we all are here in this world because we have done something or the other.
Excellent, very good.
We are not liberated yet. Right?
No, very true. So, because the laws of karma have dictated that. Now, I want to ask a question as well, because it's a very important thing about it. What is the main subject of Bhagavad Gita? First, can I ask anybody who reads Bhagavad Gita every day here? One person. That's good. Very good. Anybody else? Anybody who reads Bhagavad Gita once a week? Right, like once a week or more, shall we say? And everyone else, why not? Krishna is giving the message of how to live in this world in the Bhagavad Gita. What is the main message in Bhagavad Gita? Or one of the main messages, shall we say? There's many. Yes?
Karma and its effects.
Karma and its effects. That's one. Yeah. Anyone else? For anyone else? Any other one?
To be a witness.
To be a witness. Interesting. Yeah. No, that's good.
The way we should live our life, I guess.
Yes.
Kind of a wide description
of how we should live our life, exactly. I'm looking for as well one philosophical point as well.
You came with nothing.
Bhakti yoga. That's one of the goals. That's very good. Yeah, Bhakti yoga, because that's the ultimate. Moksha, yeah, but only in moksha has a kind of another connotation to it, which means that we want to be liberated. But what's one of the main philosophical points of the Bhagavad Gita?
Dedicate all our karmas to God.
Dedicate, that's true, yeah. But I'm talking about kind of it's like epistemology, who we are. Soul, basically, yeah. And even more so than that, we can say is that we're not the body. Do you know? We're not the body. That's one of the main points in Bhagavad Gita, that we're not the body. The body is temporary. It's comes, it stays for some time, it dwindles, it produces some byproducts, it dwindles, and then it dies. So that's the body. That's who the body is. Do you think if I went up for the next general election in Ireland on the platform that you're not the body, would I get any votes? Probably 0.0. A few kind of what do you call it, spoiled votes.
Or everybody might vote for you.
Yeah,
Irish spirit.
They might at this point in time, because
Comedy vote.
they're not happy. Yeah, they're not happy with the politics that's going on.
Yeah.
But the point is that you'll notice that when the politicians, what they were doing, they're promising people so much satisfaction for the present body, saying, we'll give you this, we'll give you this, we'll give you this, we'll give you this, we'll give you, you know, if you vote for us. Do you know? So the general system in the world today, I'm not blaming any particular party or politics or country or anything like that. I'm just saying the general tendency is for, in the material world, is to say that we are the body. I'm Irish, I'm English. Like, look at all the fighting that's going on. Look at Brexit, look at Afghanistan, look at Venezuela, look at America, look at all these places. Yeah, and look at Pakistan, look at India. Do you know? Do you know? This is, I'm Irish, I'm English, I'm Pakistani, I'm Kashmir, I'm Indian. And it's all crazy. Because you're not. You're not any of those things. But for the sake of the flag, like every country, I'm for the flag, you know. But there's millions of flags. And they're all fighting each other, do you know? Do you know? So it's a real difficulty, it's a real problem. That is actually the problem in the world. It's identifying with this body. I was born in Ireland, but you know, last lifetime I could have been born in, you know, Ethiopia, I could have been born in Afghanistan, I could have been born, you know. Actually, we used to have this thing about Protestants and Catholics in Ireland, you know. It said that, and Bhagavad Gita says, whatever you're thinking of at the time of death, that's where you will go. So if you're a Protestant, you're thinking, those Catholics, or if you're a Protestant like Catholic, those Protestants, you actually could end up the opposite of what you were thinking of. The likelihood is that you are, and the person that you've been fighting against, you become one of those. You know? So therefore this spiritual education is very important. Like, one of the, one conclusion I have is that the community of the materialists, the consumers, is like the belly. So their philosophy is the philosophy of the belly. I eat more, eat more, eat more, I want more, I want more. So it's the philosophy of greed. That's the philosophy which is prominent in general. I'm not kind of writing everything, but I know there's very good people who are in politics, and there's very good people who are in various many, you know, institutions and so on, are fighting for the right thing. But as devotees, our point is to try to introduce the proper philosophy so that people actually get knowledge of who they are and why they're doing what they're doing. And this information is vital, because if we don't, then the world is going to go off the tip of the edge, you know. So the important point is, as I was saying, is that we're not this body and that we're the soul. Last week we had a wonderful speaker who explained how each particular soul has an intimate relation with God. We have our own particular quality which resonates with God. In fact, because we're coming from God, we're very special. We're very intimately related with God. Now, we've forgotten that, maybe. We've forgotten that here in this world. We're trying to identify separately from God, but don't worry. The scripture says not to worry. We can rediscover our individual identity with God. And it's a very sacred activity. That's why we have all these processes, like, as I say, chanting. Chanting is the song of the soul. Or the Bhagavad Gita is called the song of the soul. But chanting is a vibration whereby our soul is vibrating, you know, and our vibration, Krishna is vibrating for us, and we're developing our intimate soul with God, you know. And now our soul doesn't become God; it becomes the servant of God, because that's our position. We're tiny, God is great. I've established that at the start, isn't it? We're tiny, but God is great, you know. But what we do is we develop our relationship with God, and that's where all the fun begins in spiritual life. Because God allows us to experience our individuality to the maximum degree. We're infinitesimal, we're tiny, but we are important, very important to God. And our relationship with God, God finds very important. But He cannot teach us that lesson because we're stuck here in the material world and we're trying to enjoy our senses separately from God. Do you get that idea? He cannot teach us that. So he has to teach us sometimes through negative things as well. You know, if we're very lusty, greedy, angry, proud, he has to allow us to know that. He wants us to come back because he has this intimate relation. He knows us. God knows us in our best capacity. He knows us, and he wants us to reach that capacity again. But we are causelessly anti-God almost, you know. It's just our nature. It's the nature when we choose to ignore God. That's what ignorance means. Ignorance. We ignore God. We kind of turn our back on God, and we try to think, hey, look, I'm God. Just see, am I great? You know. You know, it's so gross, but that's actually what it is. We actually turn our backs and say, no, God doesn't exist. I'm here. Look at me. And you see all the clamour to be the best this, or the most famous this, or the richest person, or the whatever. You know, we're all trying to take little bits out of God and say, look, I'm the most important person. It may not seem that it's happening so grossly, but unfortunately that is the disease. That's, as you said so correctly at the beginning, we must have done something wrong because we're here. So God is explaining to us then personally how to deal with our particular disease so that we can actually go back to the spiritual world. It's like, you see, if somebody has measles, for instance, and the doctor comes and says, oh, here, take the medicine for jaundice instead. You know, it's not going to work. We need to have the actual medicine that we want for our own disease, you know. And so that this is what this verse is about. Now, let me read a little bit on the. You can be as attentive as you can, because there's really one very important point here. Srila Sridhar Swami explains in his commentary that just as a legitimate son has to simply remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father, one who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead. In other words, he will be promoted to the kingdom of God. Okay, we all said we wanted to go back to the spiritual world. Well, all we have to do then is to be attentive in Krishna consciousness. We have to keep our ear open to what God's messages are. You know, we have to get the information that is coming from God to know how to do it. There's one important verse in Bhagavad Gita. I don't know, this is a hard question now. It's only maybe the Pandits will know the answer to this one. And it's a verse which explains about Krishna gives understanding. Does anybody know that one? It's in the Bhagavad Gita in the 10th chapter. It's about Krishna gives understanding. I'll say it out. It's a bit of a hard one, but it's mind you, we did do it in the Bhagavad Gita class, which we have every Monday between 7:15 and 8:15. That's a little plug for that, so you can come along and you'll know the answer to these questions. But it's Te Sham Satata Yaktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvakam Dadami Pudiyugamtam Yenam Mukayantite. Krishna says that he gives the intelligence by which one can come to him. To those who are devoted and worship me with love, I give the intelligence by which they can come to me. So, what do we then have to do? We have to be devoted and love Krishna with love. And that's why we have this temple here, and that's why we have all these wonderful activities we have going in the temple. Because we're trying to develop that love of God. You know? We do things, it's practical. Spiritual life is practical. You know? In your own occupation, you could, whatever it is, it may not be related to Krishna consciousness, but it may be that you do it as an offering to God. That's Bhakti Yoga, which you mentioned earlier. Or you may give a little bit of the fruit, or you may give the fruit of your like some, for instance, we have a collection which we use to do things for the temple. You can give something to that. You know, that means part of your labor is used in that sense. Do you know what I mean? Part of it then is used, it becomes spiritualized. So Krishna will give that understanding by which we can come to him. And so it says here that if we remain in Krishna consciousness, you know, if we remain conscious of God, if we don't forget God, because that's exactly what we did do, and that's why we're here. We ignored God, and we're forgetting of it, because we can't go around and drink 10 pints or 5 pints or 2 pints or whatever it is, or we can't go around and steal this or steal that or whatever, and still think of God. Do you know what I mean? We have to act on the platform of spiritual life as well. I just gave 2 examples there, just out of the blue, and I'm not trying to, you know, but I'm saying that to be Krishna conscious, we have to be alert to God's speaking to us. So, and Krishna says, I will give you the intelligence with which we can come to Him. So we have to be, Krishna says, we have to be alive in Krishna consciousness. Does everyone understand that point? You have to be alive. Krishna is there. And this is the great thing about spiritual life, about Krishna consciousness. The great thing about it is that Krishna is immanent. There's some spiritual systems which are very powerful, but the general tendency is God is so far away that we cannot, you know, we just worship Him from a distance. But a more accurate form of God worship is to be alert to God as He affects us each personally in our daily lives. That is a very intimate way of understanding God. And that information is available in Bhagavad Gita, and that's what Bhagavad Gita is trying to... It's what all spiritual systems are trying to do. It's just some are more emphasized than in others. But that's actually emphasized in Krishna consciousness. And that's the great jewel of Krishna consciousness, is that it can allow us to be aware of God. So the more we read about God, the more we can aware of it, you know, more aware of God. Like if you spend all our time, I don't know what the local soaps are at the moment, is it Fair City or I forget all the different ones anyway. But if we spend our time on my particular poison, I'll admit to, is sport. You know, that's my particular poison. I have to be very careful not to spend, because I was a sportsman when I was younger, and I know all the leagues and all that. My mind goes like, if India are playing cricket, you know, for instance, you know, like, what did Gavaskar do? Not Gavaskar. What did you know? I know the names, you know, Tendulkar or the next guys around, you know, whatever it is, you know. That's my particular one. Because now it's possible. I won't go into that. I won't elaborate any further on that. But we all have our things which keep us away in that sense. But we don't go around with equipment and beat ourselves. We just try to improve all the time. We try to spend more time learning about God than about the cricket team or the football team or the whatever, you know, or about the soap. A lot of the ladies, they love. My wife says to me that, you know, they like to hear the dramas and the different things that are going on. It's very human interest, you know, and but we have to actually. This is why even the Mahabharata is so powerful, because it is a drama, you know, and also and you become purified by hearing it. But if we hear about the pastimes that are narrated in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is so much opportunity to become absorbed. And actually, we become so absorbed that we can actually also become in those pastimes as well. You know, that is the ultimate goal. That is the highest goal. But at least, so that at the point of death, instead of coming back in this world to hear Fair City and support the cricket team and whatever, instead of doing that, we'll actually go into the spiritual world and we'll have made, you know, we'll have done our work here, you know, to do that. Now, spiritual life is meant to be very exciting and fun. It's not meant to be dull and boring and hard and I hate it, but I have to do it anyway because I'm from that's my religion. This is all the negative with regards to religion, and it's actually what puts people off religion sometimes. It's meant to be very exciting. So if we can actually get deep into these books, we will see how incredibly exciting we are. Okay, I just want to get back onto the point. I'm going to read the next part because I want to explain how God is trying to. It's not, even though it's negative things happen to us, but He's still trying to teach us and how we can make the most benefit, right? Because even when things are happening to us negatively, we want to make the most benefit from it. We want to approach it in the right way so that we can make great progress. The word susumukshaman indicates that a devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord, even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that a devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma. You hear that? Anyone who surrenders to Krishna is not going to suffer from previous karma. Wouldn't that be good? We've been suffering from previous karma for millions of lifetimes. Do you know that? Actually, for a long, long time. So now we have an opportunity not to have that. So why do bad things happen to us? Anyway, this is what it answers. However, because in his mind, a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality. In other words, you commit sins because you've got a sinful mentality. So you may say, I may stop doing things, but then your mind is still dwelling on them, you know? So that's even more subtle. So you have to uproot that as well. Do you know what I mean? You have to uproot that as well, because the simple mentality, you may stop doing things for a while, give up sweets, right, for instance, and then you see a big laddu, you know, oh, yeah, I'm giving up sweets. That's my spiritual life, I'm giving up sweets, you know, that's not what you want. But it's like that, your previous sinful mentalities, and the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit. He removes them. How? By giving the devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. They may sometimes resemble that they're sinful reactions. But the purpose of the purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency is to enjoy without God, and therefore the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail that mentality that produced the activity. Anyone get that? It's a little complicated, but it's actually, in other words, the mentality that's done to which makes the sinful activity is still there subtly in us. God will give us a punishment that will help us actually get rid of that mentality. Otherwise, it's just karma. We'll just get karma. You know, if we're not conscious of God, we're just going to get our karma. Do you know? It's just that's what will happen. We just get karma. But if we want to make spiritual progress, and there are things which are holding us back, God knows those things, because He knows the exact things that are holding us back. He will give us a little taste, a little difficulty, so that is telling us to focus on this, so that you won't actually commit that sinful activity again. He'll give you a punishment directly, which is pertinent to us. Couldn't be. God is the most expert. He'll give us the exact thing which will help us the most. So when you're going through the most difficult time in your life, and you're a devotee, and you've been practicing Krishna consciousness, you'll know that thing which God has given to you is helping you the most. You know? So that's what this verse is about. And if you go on suffering that reaction, then the kingdom of God becomes your rightful reward. Because you know you're going through the reaction, you know that it's doing that, why you're getting it, and it's correcting you. And then you're developing the qualities so that you can go back to the spiritual world. So, is there any comments at this time? Any questions? Anyone like to ask anything? Yeah.
I always like to challenge.
Good.
Yeah, it's about connection. Can't we see there are many forms of connection? Why do we need to demonize different kinds of connections? You know, suggesting like that knowing what football teams, I'm not interested in football myself at all.
What are you interested in?
I'm interested in many things. But
Are they all healthy for your consciousness?
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I kind of know it because you make this point a good few times, so I kind of know where you're coming from in that sense.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's possible to live and learn. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is, and that is what these things are about. It is.
It's good to live and learn. But
do we learn? That's
do
the
we
question.
learn? Yeah, that's true. But do we put ourselves in a bubble and like
No.
do we put ourselves in a bubble that only things that these are the things that only Krishna does and don't do the other things outside of this, otherwise you'll go to hell or
No,
you'll never meet God.
no, it's not the actual things that you do, it's the mentality in which they're done in.
Oh, right.
You know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think there's a lovely sense of community when people watch games together.
There is a sense of community.
Yeah.
There is also the difficulties. There's a sense of forgetfulness as well. You know.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
And
That's true.
and that sometimes it becomes, and because it's like you have your football team and you have your country, and and people end up
Getting swept away too much.
Yeah, it's kind of like Krishna plays football as well. Do you know what I mean? In the spiritual world, there's every sort of game going on. There's and actually the funny thing is that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer.
Yeah.
He created all the enjoyments that we have here.
Exactly.
And but that is the point. That's a very good point. The difficulty is that we do them and we forget Krishna. And we do them so that we can enjoy ourselves apart from Krishna, and
Can we enjoy with Krishna?
Oh, we can, yeah. That's what we need to do, and it's important to know how to relate with Krishna as well, and Krishna is, and that's why we need to know more about Krishna,
Yeah.
and because the difficulty sometimes is that we project what Krishna is like ourselves. Krishna must be like me, he must be like this. Now he is, in one sense we're made in Krishna's image.
But everybody's different, so how could we?
So it's very good, it's very good. And
what he meant by, sorry if I help you, what he's trying to explain is that, yes, you're right.
He's explaining.
We're all different,
Explain.
but the thing is, what he meant is that the energy, as he said, we are also children of Krishna, right?
That's true,
So we hold certain essence of Lord Krishna in us.
Sure.
But also we hold our uniqueness.
Yeah.
And there is nothing wrong about it.
Yeah.
You have to express yourself.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but that's the subtle difference.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
We're having a discussion, not
Yeah.
no.
I suppose it's as you're saying, is that we're living in the world, and we're learning in the world, and we're kind of learning how to use everything in the service of the Supreme, and like we talk about as you were saying, about a sense of community. That's the big thing in the spiritual world.
Yeah.
Is that everybody is working together. Even the leaves on the trees, even the trees are conscious. The insects are conscious. The animals, everything. Yes, yeah. The whole spiritual world is a total community, and it's all in harmony with the Supreme. The mentality which disturbs that is the mentality of the little individuals thinking that they're more
better.
important.
Better is the arrogance.
Yes. That's the mentality. Yeah.
I also have a very good example. Yesterday I was at a friend's place. I was invited to a birthday, and first I was like, oh no, I don't want to go there because you get confronted with things you maybe shouldn't do or whatever. But I was in a bad mood for 2 weeks, and I was really looking forward to see those friends again. Because they were friends, they are not in Krishna consciousness, but they are good people, they're there for me. So I was there, and I had some wine, and I wasn't drunk, but we had a good time.
Yeah.
And it helped me a lot, this
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean if I do that I forget about Krishna. Maybe in this time, of course, I wasn't chanting, but when I go home,
Yeah.
then
Maybe
he's
you
there
chant
again,
more.
he's waiting for me. It's not like, so that I don't want to use it as an excuse or something, but I think it's not easy to, when you don't live in a temple community, to live this kind of life all the time.
I mean, the community is very important, and this is why we have the association of devotees as much as possible. And you should invite us down to Galway more, so we can see the association going down there. And it's a lifestyle that we're trying to present basically, and it's a mentality that we're trying to present. You know, and it is a very winning mentality, but sometimes sometimes even those presenting it may not be practicing it sufficiently themselves. So in every sphere, we all have to be very open to hear the messages and how they can be lived. It cannot be something that's stuck in a book. You know what I mean? That's not relevant to people. It has to be there, a living, a very and something which, even in society, like for instance, we had our temple meeting here yesterday, and we had another little one today. That's what we're trying to present. We're trying to present here, a system where everybody, as much as possible, can partake and become involved in these things, And we have to make spiritual life fun as well, and we have to make it into entertainment. There has to be, it has to be community there. So how to do that? We're trying to follow basically the acharyas who, if we can become connected very, very, very closely to the acharyas, we can get the most pure form of connection, and that's what we actually present in the Krishna consciousness movement. And I very appreciate you, because I know you recognize that, and we all have to sort of pick ourselves up. We have to keep on keeping on. It's not as if we can suddenly be expert exponents of the spiritual path just automatically. It takes diligent effort, and it takes practice, and it takes regulation, because in the spiritual world, people are they're automatically in goodness. That's the nature. That's the spiritual world. In the material world here, we're kind of in a halfway house. We're kind of trying to get something for ourselves, and we just haven't got we have it in us. The soul wants these things, but it needs sometimes to get information and lesson on how to act in the best possible way. No one becomes judgmental that someone doesn't act absolutely well at any particular time. But no, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
That's not so true.
Yeah.
I think that there can be such things as, there's this perfect ideal of way to live, and if you don't live like that, because I've been there where I've actually become so pure that other people who weren't as pure as me looked like horrendous, and I was frightened of them, and they actually scared me. They were so impure. I was like, ugh. And so I don't want to be that pure that I can't go out of my house, or I can't leave the temple for fear of looking at an impure person and going, get back, ye impure person.
You need though to have that completely verified. I mean, because according to our understanding is that you start with the position that I'm the most impure, and in that way you don't have that problem, that is one of the that's one of the bedrocks actually, because we won't be able to take this knowledge in and that's the actual original problem, is that we block the knowledge because we think we know. And that's why the first verse was about that, is that as we're trying to work it out materially, trying to show our mind and whatever, we don't get it unless it's given. And that actually implies that there is a giver and someone who knows more. And even in society, we have relationships there whereby, as much as we learn, coming directly from in Parampara, coming directly from scripture, coming directly from the devotees, we give to others. So we become a conduit for other people. And we're able to help other people then. Because the Krishna consciousness movement is about helping people. That we're kind of stuck with our karma. We're kind of stuck with it, you know. We've made mistakes, and the more we become advanced, the more we can see that we consider ourselves at the bottom of the pile. Everybody else is better than us. That's humility. It's humility. Pride it's in all spiritual systems, because that way we become the best way to get the information, because we're totally open then to it. It's not that we're foolishly accept anything that's been said. No, we can check it, and experientially we can check it as well. You know, we can feel ourselves becoming purified. I know when I start my day sometimes, I actually pay my obeisances to my little altar at home. And I just tried to say to him, you know, I don't have any clue of how I can make any progress here. I'm totally dependent, you know. You know, it's because, and then I'm in an opportunity then that I'm in a kind of right position at least to get Krishna's mercy or to get God's mercy, so that I can act for God. In other words, not for Him, but more like as an instrument of God, you know. And therefore I'm not for thinking so many things. I'm just praying, and my thoughts are generally poor. Look, they've got me here in the first place, you know. So, you know, I'm dependent now. I'm really dependent on you now, God, to help me to do the right things, you know, so that I can be of help, both to myself and to others in that way. So that's that. We kind of to become empty vessels so that God can come in. You know, if we're actually full, God's no place to come in and say, I know everything. I'm good. I've got this. God, I can't get in there. Okay, well, I leave the laws of karma to work there with that person, and eventually they might come around. You know, but if we can try to make ourselves the empty vessel, and then that God can come in, and then we'll be able to tolerate, because God is trying to teach us difficult things. Like, for instance, if you've got a boil and you start blowing on it, it's not going to do anything, you know. But if we have something that's in us, and it needs the doctor's care to if Ishwara was here, he does this all the time. He used to do this, you know. He has to cut something out, you know, and it's painful. There's anesthesia, so the anesthesia is hearing from the scripture. That's the anesthesia, you know, hearing from and associating with the devotees. Then Krishna can come, you know, can cut the thing out, and then we become more qualified again. So it's a whole stage in spiritual life. The anartha nivritti means getting rid of the negative things in our heart, you know.
As you were saying that, you know, when we are in difficult time, then we should think about Krishna, that he might have created this situation.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, we should bring this thought in our mind. So what are the other things we can, you know, do practically to strengthen that belief, that when we are in difficult time, because, you know, this belief only, you know, it's
okay.
it's not that
One quick answer to that is try to do without that. Then you'll start blaming everybody. Well, it was his fault. It's my mother's fault. Yeah, that guy over there said that. You know, you start blaming. That's a symptom of you not, you know. So if you find yourself blaming other people for the difficulties that you're in, then you know that your mentality isn't correct, and you try to correct it again. So that, how to strengthen that? I think that again through regulation again and discussing it as well, like we're discussing it now, that's also good. Prabhupada had that system, as Prabhu mentioned here, about the temple, like he's not living in the temple situation, was more difficult. Prabhupada initially had that whole temple situation so that you could practice spiritual regulation, getting up early, chanting your rounds, reading, going out doing service all day. That helped you. So I'm interested at the moment personally, how we can help, because most people are not living in temples these days. So how can they do that, But having programs in your house is also good, inviting your friends in, making prasadam for people like that, And these are all really powerful ways, because it's one of the exchanges of love is giving food and accepting food, It's one of the main, and obviously it's prasadam, you offer it first to God. Speaking your mind and revealing your mind and inquiring confidentially. These are other ways, and but as it is that there's a lack of that in our country at the moment, in Ireland anyway. There's a lack of that, and we need to get it down to Galway. We need to get it down to Kerry. We need to get into Dublin more. We need to get into Dalkey. We want to get into Blackrock. We get into Ballymun. We need to get sanghas going in all of these places, so that people become. And there's the point, as you're saying about how to strengthen it, is that through the association. That's actually how to strengthen it. That really strengthens it more and more, because people are and this whole social thing is really looked after. That's so important. And Rhiannon, like drama, that is so powerful. That's actually how the whole spiritual system was spread in India at the time. That's how it was maintained, through drama, through people having the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. They would do all the players would go around all the towns, and all the people would come to it. It was like the big event. Yeah, it's like this huge event. And people would just be so absorbed in it. So we need to do those things. But yeah, I think that, from my understanding, and what I can see, the first step is to have more of these sanghas in different places, and putting on festivals like we're doing, inviting these devotees who came last week and so on. These are all different. That helps to make it stronger. So, very good question. But I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to say the opposite, which is, if you find yourself blaming everybody else for everything, then you're in. I'll just conclude by just telling a little story about last week. I was on the street trying to give out some books, and it was quite interesting, because I had listened to some nice tapes about going out in the street, and that morning I chanted my rounds really well. It was last Sunday, and I read quite well, and I listened to a tape of this person who really likes people to go out and give out books. So I was really well. I ironed my own dhoti, had it all ready, had my nice curta ready as well, and so I was ready to. Sometimes I like to walk from Baggot Street, because it's free parking over there, and just walk to the temple. So you're walking, and people kind of look at you, kind of sometimes a bit strangely, but it's kind of nice as well, But anyway, I got onto the street, and I got a few books. I had my books ready to give out my books, and nobody stopped for a while, and it's kind of, isn't so good. And then eventually I got some person to stop, and I thought, oh good, here's somebody stopping, and I said, we're showing these books today, and we're asking people to give a little donation. And he said, what? And I said, oh, we're asking people to give a little donation, because just see, this religion, you're all after money. You're just after money. And I said, no, I'm not after money. I've got my own job. I don't need to get money on this. I said, no, you're just a con man. You're a con man. And I was thinking, oh my God, I made all this endeavour to come out here. I thought, Krishna was sending somebody nice to speak to you. And he's like, you're just a con man. And then the next one, you're a manipulator. You're just trying to manipulate me to give you some money. And, oh my God, what did I do to deserve this? And then, you know, it just kept on going on and on. It just, and it wasn't getting any better. Usually I can kind of manipulate my way around it, you know? And it kind of gets a little better. But this guy was getting worse and worse. You know? Everything I said was bad. And eventually I said to him that I started saying, "Thank you. No, you're right. You're right. No, you're actually dead right. Yeah." He said, "What?" And I said, "Oh, no, thank you very much. No, you're just the right person. I know, and I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming here today and speaking to me. Thank you very much." And he got really disturbed then. But anyway, eventually I had to stop, and it was quite a funny thing. But so it just shows you, I had a little pride coming out, you know, as going, you know, I know this, I'm going to have a book to do, whatever. I got immediately, Krishna gave me, you know, what I needed at the time, and actually it got a little bit even quite funny, because immediately after that, someone came and she had a person with a special needs person, and she stopped in and I said, "Oh yes, we're going to have these books and we're trying to ask people to give a donation." She said, "Okay, and what should you give?" I said, "Oh no, it's a voluntary thing, whatever you want." And she just took out €2, and just as she was giving it to me, somebody took a photograph, you know, and the person before had the problem, but he told me, I've got a tape recorder in this phone. I've got you taped now, and I'm gonna spread this all over the internet, you know.
You're missing.
So I was thinking,
special needs.
I got a little paranoid, so he's taping me and he's taking a photograph of me, you know. But I don't think it was interrelated anyway. The guy was just taking photographs. So, but anyway, so it was raining today. I didn't get out today, so I didn't get an opportunity to find out what Krishna was going to do today. But I did think about it, and that's why I kind of came up with the class that Krishna, you know, he gives you this sort of the thing which he knows is best for you, you know, the difficulty, and you have to accept it with your full heart, you know. And it was only when I kind of turned around and said thank you, did the whole thing change, you know. But before that, I was just when I was trying to defend and say no, I'm not trying to do that, it was getting worse and worse.
One query I have for some reason. Do you wear the dhoti in the job as well, like in the corporate?
No, I don't in the job. No, I don't actually. And I could. Because a lot of my clients know that I'm, you know, and the devotee as such, or I'm trying to be a devotee. And actually, on another occasion, one of my biggest clients, they live in this actually palace, you know. And I go to them regularly. They're very, very, very natural, very normal people, you know. And they had done a video on O'Connell Street. They had just been out doing kirtan along the street, you know. And they for the 9 o'clock, one of the programs was on. They were asking about people on O'Connell Street, and they did a program a little bit about us, and I was kind of the person who was speaking for us. Yeah, we do this every Saturday. This time we were doing it every Saturday night. So anyway, when I was in their house, and I got them, there was a nice piece of art that they got for the wall, and the wife, she's got good wish. She says, "Oh, there's a spokesman for the Hare Krishna movement," you know. So like a lot of my clients know that, all right, but it kind of puts people off from the occupation, so I don't. But generally, some devotees I know, they wear tilak, you know, and Prabhupada sometimes said that you can wear a tilak if you want. But ultimately, it depends. It's the individual choice, what you feel comfortable with, you know. But, okay, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Thank you very much. So now we're going to have the next part of the program. We're going to have Arti. So if you want to, everybody stand up and.